You hear the name Amelia Earhart, and you probably think of adventure, courage, and, of course, one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. But before she became a legend, she was a girl with a wildly ambitious dream. We all know about her disappearance over the Pacific, right? But the story of how she got into that cockpit in the first place, that's just as remarkable, if not more so. So that's the real question, isn't it? How does a girl from Kansas become the most famous pilot on the entire planet? Well, to understand the legend, you have to go all the way back to the beginning, to a childhood that was anything but ordinary. Her journey to the skies didn't start in the clouds. Nope. It started in a backyard in Atchison, Kansas, with a family that pretty much encouraged her to break every mold she could find. From a young age, Amelia was, well, she was different. Her mom had this philosophy of not raising nice little girls. So while other kids wore dresses, Amelia and her sister Pidge ran around in bloomers so they could move and explore freely. And explore they did. We're talking climbing trees, collecting bugs, even hunting rats with a rifle. Her mother, Amy, really nurtured that independent spirit, and honestly, that decision shaped the entire rest of her life. And this spirit of adventure wasn't just about playing games. It was about engineering her own thrills. Get this, at just 7 years old, after seeing a roller coaster on a family trip, she just decided, yep, I need one of those. So she built it. She took some wooden planks, propped them up against the roof of the family tool shed to make a ramp, and used a broken wooden box as her cart. I mean, it was risky, it was inventive, and it was just so quintessentially Amelia. After her first and only ride, which ended in a crash, a bruised lip, and a torn dress, she didn't cry. Instead, she popped up completely exhilarated and shouted this line to her sister. Talk about foreshadowing. The seed was officially planted. But here's the funny thing. That early taste of flying didn't immediately turn into a love for aviation. In fact, her first encounter with an actual airplane was a total bust. Talk about a change of heart. In 1908, a 10-year-old Amelia saw a biplane and basically called it junk. But then, 12 years later, she's at an air show, and a stunt pilot dives right at her. Instead of flinching, she just stood her ground. And in that moment, something just clicked. Shortly after that, she paid for a 10-minute flight with a pilot named Frank Hawks. And that was it. That's all it took. That one short ride sealed her fate. There was absolutely no turning back. And this wasn't just some casual hobby she was picking up. Flying lessons cost $1,000. $1,000 back then is like over $18,000 today. So she worked all kinds of jobs, photographer, truck driver, you name it, just to save up the money. That's some serious dedication. And this just shows you how all in she was. She didn't just want to fly, she wanted to be a flyer. So she chopped her hair short, bought a leather jacket, and my favorite part, slept in it for 3 nights and stained it with aircraft oil just to give it that worn, experienced look. She was literally building her own identity from scratch. With that kind of ambition, it's no wonder she started to get noticed. And in 1928, this huge opportunity came up that would make her world famous, just maybe not in the way she really wanted. So the organizers of this transatlantic flight were specifically looking for a woman to be on board, and Amelia fit the bill perfectly. The only catch? She wasn't trained on the instruments needed for that kind of flight. So for nearly 21 hours, her job was just to keep the flight log. She was a passenger on a historic flight. Can you even imagine how frustrating that must have been? To cross the Atlantic by air and never even touch the controls? This quote says it all. She felt like a sack of potatoes. She didn't want the fame. She wanted the achievement. And she was determined to go back and earn it on her own terms. The public, though, they didn't care about the details. She was an overnight sensation. We're talking ticker tape parades. The press nicknamed her Lady Lindy, making her a female version of Charles Lindbergh. So she had all the fame in the world, but she felt like she hadn't earned a bit of it. So Amelia set out on a new mission, to prove to the world, and more importantly to herself, that she was way more than just a famous face. She was a pilot. And this is where she truly built her legacy. In 1932, she did it. She flew the Atlantic alone, exactly 5 years after Lindbergh. But she didn't stop there. She just started shattering long-distance records one after another. Each one of these flights silenced any doubters that were left.
Now, behind the scenes, her husband, George Putnam, was a huge part of her success. He was a publisher who helped manage her celebrity after that first flight, and together they became this unstoppable team. She even cleverly described their marriage using an aviation term: dual control.
And speaking of their partnership, you have to see this. In a letter she gave Putnam on their wedding day, she laid out her terms for an equal marriage, saying she wouldn't hold him to any medieval code of faithfulness and expected the same in return. She kept her name, her independence. I mean, for the 1930s, this was radically progressive stuff.
So after conquering the Atlantic and the Pacific, Amelia started looking for one final, monumental challenge to top off her career.
And this was it, the ultimate flight, circling the entire globe right at its widest point, the equator. It was the longest, most dangerous route you could possibly take. In 1937, she and her navigator Fred Noonan set off to do what no one had ever done before. And we all know how that flight ended, in silence and in mystery. But the true power of Amelia Earhart's story isn't in her disappearance, it's in her ascent. It's in the story of a girl who built a rickety roller coaster in her backyard just because she wanted to feel what it was like to fly, and then spent the rest of her life chasing that feeling, inspiring millions of us along the way.